Mike and Tom are registered with Stewart Partners Global Advisory LLC.
Common Sense Finance with Mike Wiginton and Tom Farrell of HL Wiginton Capital Management, an independent investment and financial planning firm in downtown Jasper. Mike is a chartered financial analyst charter holder, and Tom is a certified financial planner professional. They are here to discuss and give their thoughts on current financial and economic matters. Now, with Common Sense Finance, here are Mike and Tom.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Common Sense Finance. I'm Mike Wiginton. This is Tom Farrell. And today we're going to have our own Tom Farrell talk to us a little bit about estate planning. Now, before you get started, because I want you to address this for me. Okay. You know, it has been the case that with me that folks oftentimes will confuse the whole financial planning, retirement planning scenario with estate planning, and certainly there's some overlaps. But when I think about estate planning, you bring up the word estate, I think about death, as opposed to financial or retirement planning, which I hope I'm still alive to enjoy my retirement. So I'm living versus the estate planning scenario. So before you get through, I wish you'd just address that and tell me if you've had any similar experience. Anyway, take it away.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, estate planning is dealing with what happens to my assets, my finances, when I'm not here on this earth anymore. So what we want to try to do is, before we get to that point, we want to make sure we plan properly, we've set things up so that the client's wishes are taken care of exactly like they want to. So, but when a lot of people hear estate planning, they think about an elaborate trusts and things like that, and certainly in some situations those do make sense. But we're going to talk about some just very simple steps you can take right now with how your accounts are set up and things like that to make sure that if something were to happen to you, your assets pass smoothly. Avoid probate in most cases. I know a lot of people talk about they want to make sure their assets avoid probate without having to do a lot of legal work beforehand. So these are some simple steps. The first thing is make sure, and you probably, this may be elementary to most people, but all of your insurance policies, whether it's life insurance or maybe you have an annuity or two out there, make sure you have the beneficiaries up to date on those. That's the same goes for your retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, any of those type of accounts. Simply add your beneficiary on there and review it periodically to make sure it's it's set up exactly like you want it to be, because those assets pass by rule of law is what's called. So whatever the beneficiary designation says, that's what's going to happen. So that's the easiest thing on those accounts.
And would you recommend to folks who have accounts in whether at the bank or at their brokerage firm that are in individual name, would you recommend to those folks that they at least consider a transfer on death? I think at the bank they may refer to them as pay on death type of title.
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to talk about. I'm glad you brought that up, because your checking accounts, your CDs, savings accounts, a brokerage account, so a regular brokerage account, all of those, if you just have it set up as an individual with just your name on it, and you pass away, those assets are going to go through the probating process. So to avoid that, like Mike was saying, is add a pay on death or transfer on death. The person you add to that account has no authority on that account until you pass away. Or if you have somebody that you want that you trust to have authority on that account while you're still alive, you could add them as a joint owner. So that's a good way to accomplish what you're trying to do there. For real assets, now this gets a little bit trickier. You can't just add a transfer on death or a beneficiary. If you want to have somebody that takes control of those assets immediately after you die, you'll need to add them as a joint owner on any land, houses, vehicles, things like that. Any personal use assets, you'll need to add a joint owner. We have a lot of clients that have added a child, or obviously if you're married, your spouse is typically going to be that joint owner. So that's a smooth transition there. And then the last thing to touch on is a trust. When is it appropriate to set up a trust? I mean, when does it make sense to go through that process? There is some additional cost in setting up a trust, but some examples may be if you have a special needs child, you want to set up a trust to make sure they're taken care of appropriately, or if maybe you have a child that just is no good with money, you're afraid they may blow through it. You can set up a spendthrift type trust to make sure those assets come out of the trust in a controlled manner to that person. So those are a couple of examples. Obviously, when you get into a situation where there may be some large estate tax issues, you want to look at setting up a trust and go to a competent professional to help you accomplish that goal. But other than that, those are just some very simple things that you can do. I encourage all of you to go, check all of your accounts, look at your insurance policies, things like that, make sure they're up to date, because there have been some instances where your will, and having an up-to-date will is very important. You don't want your will and your beneficiary designations to conflict. But you have to make sure, because that will is superseded by the beneficiary on IRAs and life insurance in most cases. We had a case of Dr. in Huntsville, got divorced, remarried, changed his will for his new wife to be the beneficiary of the life insurance contract, but did not change the beneficiary, so his ex-wife got the proceeds from life insurance, even though that's not what he intended. So just make sure all those records are up to date, and you need to review them every few years, or if you have some kind of a life-changing event. So with that said, Mike, I think that's about all we need to discuss about estate planning today.
All right. Thanks for that, Tom. Until next time.
Just can't believe all the things people say. Controversy. Am I black or white? Am I straight? Okay. Controversy. Do I believe God? Do I believe me? Controversy. 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 I can't understand.